1 second, boys. I got to take a photo.
He got
Jimmy's
shoved.
famous out there.
Nice to meet you.
Jeez Louise.
He honestly got shoved first.
Hey, I like this. Jimmy on the road is good.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Jimmy's great. Hey, Jimmy, what are they saying over there to you about the Americans yesterday? In terms of, Brandon Aronson, Tyler Adams, Jesse Marsh, is there is there excitement around Americans coming to the Premier League?
Yeah, I think what it's doing is it's making us more credible. So now my friends that are over here in the UK, who I've obviously been reaching out to since I've been here, just to spend time with them if I can, like, hey, that Jesse Marsh is the real deal, and that Brendan Aronson can really play. Yeah, Tyler Adams is solid. You get in a lot of that, and I think we're continuing to, wipe away that perception that we're not very good at the game. And obviously we got to keep proving it game after game after game. I love the comments from Brendan Aronson afterwards saying that, Americans can play football too. And he's going to be one of the people that's kind of paving the way for the next generation to come through. So it's exciting. It's exciting.
Jimmy, is it to a point where it's annoying you a little bit, especially when you're there, when people make these comments as if like Brendan Aronson is the first player to ever play in the Premier League, or Tyler Adams is the first player to have a solid game?
Like Clint Dempsey didn't ball on these guys.
I mean, it's just like, on one hand, I was really excited because it is another validator, Jesse Marsh doing his thing. But on the other hand, I'm like, dude, I'm like, what scale do you think we have to reach in terms of global success? Do you think it's the national team? Do you think it's club players playing at clubs before we get that level of respect where it's not? Like I started thinking about like how many countries around the world are having to go through this conversation constantly of being like, oh yeah, it's getting better.
Yeah, no, that's true. I guess, as I met that guy Yusuf who said he's Egyptian, that's why he's supporting Liverpool today. I'm like, I wonder if he has to always have to say, well, Egypt can play. Look at Mo Salah, So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm just not tuned into that discourse or narrative that's happening in other countries, but it feels like we have to work extra hard just because we call the sport a different name, which is stupid, but that's part of this perception.
You're at Old Trafford. Has there been any talk of Christian Pulisic coming to Manchester? Have fans been excited about that potential possibility, or is it kind of like, no, we're good. That's not what we need?
I think it's kind of going hand in hand with the news now that Anthony from Ajax is a possibility. It's kind of either or. You're not going to get both of those guys, even though there was talk of potentially getting Cody Gakpo as well from the Eredivisie. So, yeah, it just feels like, and you guys know, and everybody else listening, they have a lot of those same players in those same spots that have proven they're good players. Rashford, Elanga, to name a few, Sancho. So it's interesting they're going to continue to look for those areas when they have other areas that I think need more attention. Casemiro obviously solved a problem, but they need now to solve some other issues. I think right back is an issue. I think maybe one more center back where Varane can come good. That solves some problems, but they just seem like they were in good spirits. When I went to Carrington, the training facility yesterday, it was very, very cool. And there was not as much talk about Pulisic. I think what's more Brendan Aronson right now is kind of the talk of the country, and they just love his energy and his never say die spirit. I mean, even on the goal that he scored and stripped it from Edouard Mendy, he gave the ball away initially, but then his immediate reaction to try to win it back, I think really sets the tone for who he is as a person and who he is as a player. And I think that really resonates with the fan base for Leeds and for other fans that are watching, that we like this kid because he does these intangibles that maybe you're not seeing from other clubs like United. I think the fans just want to see them fight. So I'm expecting a good response from United against Liverpool tonight.
Jimmy, in terms of like going beyond that, obviously there's much more clubs in the London area than in Manchester in terms of the divisions. But what about our players kind of playing in the Championship? Has there been any? Have you heard from anybody in terms of the quality of the player or the performances of our Championship players? Because we've got quite a few of them right now, including
great question.
Who had a brace.
Well, being in Manchester, you get some Zach Steffen talk already. So definitely have had some conversations about him. And it's funny, like once he's not part of the mix anymore, they're like, how's he doing at Middlesbrough? They kind of just, he's on loan. He's not really one of theirs anymore. So that has its own.
You tell him he's not doing great? Is that what you said?
No,
it's not started great?
Stay positive. I'm not just trying to stay positive with regard to that. But yes, Josh Sargent did get brought up to me this morning where just, hey, when you put that guy in the number 9 spot and give him a run of games, he can score some goals. And to the point where I thought he looked so dynamic, and I'm sure you guys thought the same thing, where he's going to get, I almost think you got to bring him in at this point and give him another run out, because he does provide a dynamic that maybe we haven't seen in some of our other players. So I'm actually glad he got this opportunity. And Greg's going to have some really tough choices. There's no getting around that.
Well, you look at the other strikers. Jordan Pefok, goal and assist against Leipzig in a win for Union Berlin.
Yeah.
Haji Wright, a brace in a 5-2 win versus Trabzonspor. You got Ricardo Pepi, who's still coming off the bench.
He got 22 minutes.
He got 22 minutes, which is an improvement.
Better than the
right?
3 minutes he got the week before.
And then Jesus Ferreira missed because of yellow cards in the match against Nashville, and they got absolutely worked. Thanks for the trash to the Eco Lab. Much love.
Hey, recycling's important, everybody.
So given that, how many strikers do you think Greg brings to the September friendlies? Yeah.
I'd say 4. I think at this point, Ferreira comes in. I'm curious if he brings in Haji Wright again, given that he gave him a chance in June.
Mm-hmm.
If Jordan Pefok continues to score, I think you bring him in. Pepi might not get called in, man. He might have played himself out of the World Cup, which is pretty crazy to think about, because especially I want to hear Heath's thoughts on that, because he's clearly Pepi's #1 fan. But I think Josh Sargent. The funny thing is, when Timo Pukki comes back in for Norwich, then you put Sargent back out wide, and he becomes kind of this hard-working winger that doesn't really have or become too much of a threat up top. So I'm curious what they do with him when Pukki becomes healthy and everybody's an option. But I wouldn't mind seeing Sargent get called back in just to give him that last run out. So you got Pefok, you got Sargent, you got Ferreira. And then who am I missing? Somebody? I mean, Haji Wright, I think, is an interesting one.
Well, the other one is Brandon Vasquez.
Brandon Vasquez. Yeah, I would like to see Vasquez in as well. Yeah,
it looks like he just agreed to a new contract, which again I like because we get real hyped up about selling our players when they have a good 6-month window, aka Ricardo Pepi. I know that he sort of forced his hand on that. But Jimmy, just to respond on the Ricardo Pepi front, like they sort of made their bed going to Augsburg. I don't think that was ever going to be the right move. I think we all agreed on that when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for me as a defender, Jimmy, you as a defender, no problem. We'll go to Augsburg. We'll fight it out. We'll whatever.
Yeah,
but we're being judged differently. But for a striker that is as young as he is, to go into a situation where you're not going to get a lot of chances, it's kind of chaotic. You're fighting relegation. I think he's going to find himself, unless he gets a last-minute loan move, which I'm hoping for, to somewhere where he can be in positions to develop as a striker and score goals. It's still on him. A lot of it's still on him. It's going to come down to him. But, yeah, he could have played himself out right now for September. And if you're out of September, you're going to have to be in fantastic form to get a World Cup call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm going to jump in, Charlie. I think Heath is right that if you don't get called into September, I think you're pretty much out. Unless you were hurt and you're like a Gio Reyna and they want to be thoughtful about that. And happy to see that he got some relatively meaningful minutes in his first game back in the Bundesliga in many, many months. So that was exciting. I would say that I agree with you, though, that if you don't get called in September, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a look. Unless you go on some incredible tear, I think Greg's going to want to know what you're about and how you fit it. And maybe more importantly, how you fit in with the group. Leading into naming the roster, which I don't even know when that is. Have they announced when the rosters have to be named?
No, but I can figure that out. And then in terms of Brendan Aronson, right? You'd have to say he is for sure in the starting 11 after that performance against Chelsea.
You can't.
I know, but you can't imagine him
not.
Off the bench. You can't imagine him not starting in the World Cup. So with that, he comes inside. He's an inverted winger. He goes all over the place. But the player that he would be making room for when he does come inside is Serginho Dest. Now, I know there's been talk about him going to United. Has anyone brought that name up since he was a fan of Erik ten Hag's?
Yeah, so Serginho Dest is a name I've heard a few times and been talked about and asked about, like, how good is he as a player? And I basically say he's the opposite of Wan-Bissaka, that he won't defend very well, but he can get bomb forward and get after it. Now, Wan-Bissaka can't get forward all that well, but maybe doesn't have that final product in the attacking third. But he can defend. And so I'm kind of curious, actually, if he starts tonight, so he can lock down Luis Diaz and who United go with. But Dest is an option that I think they might not have in his skill set. And obviously that previous relationship with Ten Hag would be important in terms of his transition and expectations and Ten Hag already having that experience of knowing what to say and what buttons to push to get the most out of him. But I think that's the biggest thing with regard to that. Also, I should mention a lot of talk about Fulham and our Americans there. Anthony Robinson getting a lot of love. Tim Ream having Fulham beat Brentford 3-2. Fulham's under their manager Marcus Silva have an identity of how they want to play, and so there's been some talk about Fulham and kind of this revival of that club at Craven Cottage and the Americans' part in it. So, yeah, a lot of positivity about the Americans.